morning, everyone, and welcome to the StackVision Dashboards webinar. I'm Taylor Hempel, and I'm a marketing specialist here at ESC Spectrum. Today, we'll be reviewing a valuable tool in our data acquisition system, StackVision. Our system support engineer, too, Quinn Lesar, will walk you through best practices when using the dashboard feature in StackVision. This feature allows you to design a snapshot of your system and then view your data in real time using a display monitor in a control room or your workstation. Just a reminder to hold any questions you have until the end and type them in the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. After the presentation is over, I'll read out the questions to Quinn and he will answer them to the best of his ability. With that being said, Quinn, you can take it away.
Thanks, Taylor. Like she said, I'm Quinn. I'm a system support engineer too with ESC Spectrum, and this is the dashboards within StackVision webinar. A little background about me. I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin. Came down here to Texas. I'm located in Austin. When I went to school at Texas A&M, got my bachelor in science in petroleum engineering. And I've been with ESC Spectrum for roughly 3.5 years. The whole time I've been in the support team. So yeah, I may have worked with you if you're on the call. If not, we may be working in the future together. A little bit of what we're going to talk about is just a general overview of dashboards. I'm just going to go through some snapshots of it, how it looks when you open up, when it gets into edit mode, just the general layout of the screen. And then when we go into how to create and edit dashboards, I'll do a little bit more of a live demo, going through specific objects, parameters, dashboard settings, parameter settings, things of that nature. I'll go through how to save that dashboard, and then if you want to make that a public versus private dashboard and discuss the difference between the two. Then we'll go into flag settings with those objects and dashboard parameters, as well as showing you the active alarms feature in the newer StackVision versions and how you can navigate through there. And then I'll touch on building predictive and target averages, talk a little bit about each one of those and how you can utilize those and the difference between that and our old console viewers. At the end, I'll touch on the new features if I haven't already talked about them in the previous things of the new features in StackVision 7.3 and go from there and then answer any questions that you guys may have. So here is what dashboards would look like when you open it up from StackVision. So for those of you that may have never opened up dashboards, it's located in StackVision, and then on the top toolbar, you'll see Tools, and then there'll be a dashboards drop down that you select. You'll see that in the live demo I'll go through where you select that, and then depending on the StackVision version that you actually have, you may have just a new client option in that toolbar rather than it being in Tools. So just depending on that, it's different ways to open up dashboards. And then this is that typical screen you'll see once you get it opened up. You'll have a new dashboard tab, the ability to add a new dashboard with the plus button, similar to how Chrome works or any other internet browser where you just add a new tab and then you can start and view multiple dashboards at the same time. You'll have your folder explorer on the left where you'll see your public options of previously created dashboards, as well as if you have any private dashboards that were privately created under the username that you logged into StackVision with. You'll see active alarms in the bottom left. You'll see the toolbar on the top as well as the dashboard name. If you click, if I go back here, if you click this little pencil, you'll switch into edit mode, and that's what this next screen will look like. You'll end up seeing a slightly different view. You'll have the Explorer that can be pinned on the side. I'll show you that in the live demo. And then you'll have control options of objects, parameters, calibrations, things of that nature. You'll also see that you can edit the dashboard name. You'll have a dashboard edit screen with a grid mode. That's another way to tell that you're in edit mode versus display mode. And then the toolbar will become activated and you'll have options there, as well as replacing the pencil will be a little monitor, and that's how you switch back to display mode. And then on the right side, you'll see settings. This is where all your settings for all your objects, dashboards, flags, everything will be on this right side pop-up, and you'll see that when we go through the demo. Okay, and this is where we'll start the demo portion. We'll go through objects. We'll go through how to drag and drop gauges, trends, tables, text boxes, calibrations. Every object that we have, I'll go through and kind of discuss their settings and where you find those. I'll show you how to drag and drop and how to resize, move, and just navigate as a whole through dashboards. We'll show each of the parameter settings and dashboard settings, like I said, associated with each parameter or object. Certain objects have personalized settings that you can select based on the object that you're working with. And then at the end, I'll save the dashboard and show you that private versus public option. All right, so this is what you'll see as a screen when you open up StackVision. You log in with the client. At the top here, you'll see tools and then the dashboards option. And then, like I said, depending on the StackVision version you're at, you may see a new client option, and you'll just go in there and then there'll be dashboards. So once I open that up, this is the screen that you'll actually end up seeing. And you can see you got a blank edit screen if you wanted to create a new dashboard. And on the left here, you have the explorer of all the other options previously created. You have a private folder. I just saved out a private option. If I open that up, you just double click it and it'll open up the dashboard. And if I wanted to add another, you just hit a little plus button and it takes you back to what it looked like when we opened it up. And then you can just open up how to create and edit is the dashboard that I'll be working in. And if you didn't have one here, all you have to do is click the edit pencil and you could start fresh with a brand new dashboard. I just have one started for the sake of remembering what to show you all, and a little easier rather than having to create all the text boxes. But here we are. I'll click the edit button, and once it opens up, you can see that the toolbar now has options to save the active dashboard at the top. You'll have, if you select an object, you can discard the object here, you can copy and paste, and then you can bring the selected items to the front or the back. Similar to how if you've worked in PowerPoint or any Microsoft product, depending on how you added the object, if you add it second, it takes precedence and goes on top. But if later on you wanted this to be in front, you just send it in front or send it back behind. And that's all that those features would do for you. When you are resizing objects, you can see it's similar to PowerPoint where they'll show you the height and length of other objects on the screen, so you can have better organizational templates so everything's the same size, width, everything. That's just a nice new feature that we added to really ease the creation of the dashboard. But over here on the right, you'll see dashboard settings. These are the default settings for your dashboard when you open it up. You can see the width and height is just the grid width and height. It's what you'll be working with as your edit screen. You have a background color option. You can select any color you'd like, depending on how you prefer. The automatic default is like this gray charcoal look, but you can change it to any color you'd like, depending on what the operators would like, or if you have a private, if you have a preference, you just have to select it there. These digital input closed color and open colors are the default settings for the digital input objects over here on the left. So if you're working and you pull one out, just know if you're seeing red, that's taking the default settings unless you edit that specific input for specific colors individually. It will draw these default colors from here. And then these second settings are for expirations. We don't get an update from the server, or we're not getting any polling. There'll be an expired message that pops up in all your objects. This is the length of time that it takes for that expiration message to display. So now we'll go through a little bit of the certain objects that you can pull over. We have, if you hover over each icon or tile over here, it tells you what it is. So we have number gauge, analog gauge, a vertical gauge. So all three of these will show the same information, just in 3 different visual representations. So if you click and drag and you drop, it'll have an undefined number gauge. That's because we haven't defined what the parameter is going to be associated with this number gauge quite yet. So you'll have to go into the parameters dropdown, select your unit, and then you just click the parameter you want, drag and drop it on top of that gauge. And it's going to default into the instant time interval. I don't have push polling set up, nor do I have a logger configured with this test server. So it just is going to be blank until I go change the interval setting, which if you have your object selected, you're going to see we had more settings on the right populate. And these are the parameter settings. So all these objects are going to have the similar settings at the top here. You'll notice when we go through, you're going to have the ability to show a caption or just show the value. You're going to have an option to show the plant in the caption, show the server in the caption. You can remove the source and controller from the caption, so it just shows the parameter name. So if you only have one controller out there, maybe you just want to see the parameter name, but if you have 10 loggers and you have a bunch of the similar information, similar parameters, you might want to have that source shown so you know which parameter you're looking at. You have the unit of measure, and you have an option to do a custom caption where it grays out everything. It's going to auto show caption, and then you can just type in, if you just want it for the flow, you have that option as well. And then you have actual settings for the data. This is where you can change the interval. So if I wanted to show 1 minute data, you're going to see it populate the 1 minute data that I have there. And there's actually another way if you wanted to change between gauges, since all three of these, like I said, the number, analog, and vertical, you can go ahead and you can change the style here and it'll show you, it'll flip between the different styles of gauges. So if you already had pulled it in, had all the information set up, and you decided you wanted to swap the visual representation of the data, you can go ahead and do that here in the gauge type. But here's what the other ones look like. If I just click and drag the analog, again, it's going to be blank until I pull over data. Again, I'd have to go and swap the interval. And then I can pull a vertical gauge as well and associate that flow parameter with it. So if you wanted it all to be 1 minute data and you pulled all your flow into these in your different type of gauges, or say I had flow, CO2, and flow hold and fuel fact, but I wanted them all to be on the minute interval, you can mass select objects. So you can do that in two ways. You can click and then drag a window over and it'll select, and you'll see it in a white box surrounding them, all the selections. And then you can come over here and change the interval to whatever you'd like, and it's going to change that. Or you can select Control and click, and then come over here and change the interval that way. So that's an easier way to not have to come into each gauge, drag it over, and then select the interval each time. You can multi-select by hitting Control and then click each object that you'd like to have the same interval at. A similar thing that you can do to bring over a object, instead of pulling the object from the object controls at the top and dragging it over and then dragging the parameter on top, is if you just know the parameter that you want and you know it's going to be a type a number gauge, you can actually just pull flow right over and it's going to auto use a number gauge, and then you can actually just change the gauge here, the gauge style. That's a little faster, kind of just user specific depending on how you like to build your dashboard. If you know you're going to be using number gauges like this, it's a little easier to just drag and drop right from the parameters rather than having to do the object and then the parameter. That's a little bit about that. Those settings, there are flag settings. I'll talk about that a little later, but that will be in the bottom portion of the settings screen when you have an object selected. And then to discard, you can either click the object, hit delete on your keyboard, you'll get a message like this, or you select the object and discard. So that's how you would just bring over those types of gauges and how those settings. With the vertical and analog gauges, you do have graph min-max, so you can change the representation of the data and however you visually would like to see it. You can change that over here. Same goes for the vertical. You have that option to change it there. For trends now, you're going to drag and drop a trend. So since we haven't defined the parameter, you're going to have no data. So you just select a the values you'd like to pull over. So if I just do flow again, and let's do CO2. So again, I don't have instant, it's gonna default to an instant interval. So if you just select the object, you can see the interval setting has now been highlighted for me to select the minute. And it's also going to default history is always gonna show the previous 100 entries. So you can see that right now, 100 entries with this type of data is just too much to really get anything out of this graph. So you have the option to use these plus or minus options in the bottom left to minimize the amount of historical data points you have selected, or you can just type it up over here. So since I have 2 parameters selected, I don't see my y-axis right now. If you click in the bottom right, you can drag that just to be a little bit bigger, and now you can see that my y-axis has populated. You can see that each parameter at the top is associated with the color. Flow's got this brown, that's how you know that that's flow, and CO2 is in like a purple color at the top here, and then those y-axis is associated with that color as well. You can see that the y-axis has single digits here, and then they go to scientific notation on the left. If you have more than 3 digits, it's going to default to go to that scientific notation over using the full digits. That's just for space, so that the trend is able to display the information. No matter how big you make the graph or the trend, it's going to keep that notation. And then if you actually click on the parameter itself, this is where you're going to see, so if you highlight at the top of the chart, the parameter, you'll see you have those similar settings to show plant, server name, source, all those. You can customize it. And then there's this new feature for graph auto scaling. If you uncheck that, you can actually manually input what you want the graph min-max to be. And if this is checked, it's going to just auto scale based on the data that's coming in. So that is what trends would look like and some information about those. If we pull on a table, move this over a little bit. Table, similar to everything else, is going to pull in default instant, and it's going to be blank because I have not defined parameters associated that I want in this table. So on the right here, when I have the table, you're going to have these table column settings. So this is where you'd want to pull in the time interval that you'll want your parameters shown at. So I have 1 minute and 1 hour data built. So I'll remove the instant with that little X in the top right. And then, so these will be the time intervals shown, and then I just select whichever parameters I'd like to be associated in the table. So I'll do CO2, flow, and then we can we'll just pull fuel fact over. And then if you click the top left with the gray, that's how you'll be able to navigate through the screen. If you click the parameter itself and try to drag, that's where you're going to change where it's shown in the table. So to navigate, you use this top left bar, or gray bar. So in the settings on the right, you'll see if I already have my intervals, I can minimize that. You have those similar settings for how you want your data to be visually represented. And you also have applicable intervals, which is a cool feature where if I have CO2 and I only want CO2 at the 1 hour interval, and I don't really need the 1 minute, but I need fuel fact and flow to be visually represented at the minute, I can just take CO2 and I can uncheck the 1 minute, and it'll just gray out that box in the table. If you don't want to have a bunch of data shown and you want to have the table of data, but you just don't need it, that's an easy way to just take some data off visually. And then again, we'll go through it a little later, but we have flag options here for the table, and I'll discuss that more in depth a little bit later. The other thing you can add into a table that's handy is a digital input. You can just go to the digital input on the left side here, expand it, and then select whichever input you want and drop that right on top, and it'll also display that input within the table. So this is a way to really have data shown in a nice visual representation instead of having to do a bunch of gauges and then inputs. You can have everything in a table and have it all neat and created pretty much automatically for you. You drag drop those intervals. I don't have a logger hooked up, so it's going to continue to show initializing. And then this would take the default settings from the dashboard colors for open and closed. So you can't directly edit those settings, I don't believe. Yeah, they'll take the default settings for those. So if you didn't want to put a digital input in the table, you can do that just on its own. So in the digital input line, you just drag and drop, and that from the digital input line will automate the object, or you can from objects actually select the digital input, drag and drop, and it's going to be an undefined object. And then you would just take whichever input you'd like, drag and drop that on top. So however you prefer to do that, if you'd like to do the object first and then the input line, or you could take it right directly from the input line list. Settings that are associated with that input, if you have it highlighted, will populate. Like everything else, you have the selections for the header, and then you have override colors, which I was talking about earlier. So this would customize individually for this input and output. If you wanted to change what the color was for that input, you could select that there and then save that out. If I had two inputs and I wanted them to both have the same override colors and not take the default, you can do that method of either highlighting them both and then adjusting their settings. And then you'd see, I have to save that out, and then you'd see that those override colors, or you can do the select with a hold control, select them both, and then you'd have those override colors as an option there. That's the other way to mass edit inputs, to not use the defaults if there were 3 or 4 or 5, however many you'd like to edit, and they'd all have the same input and output colors. For outputs, it's relatively similar. You can either pull from the objects at the top for an undefined output, or you could pull directly from the output line drop down, and it would pull up the exact same thing that I just built here. It would pull an auto build and default to those. The settings that go with the outputs are similar to the inputs, but you have options to only show close, only show open, if you want to restrict your user to only be able to open or close a certain output. You also have the option to customize the open text. If you guys have different verbiage on site for what open and close means, you have the option to type in whatever you'd like in that button there. For calibrations, this would be the bottle look at the top icon. So this would be the drag and drop, undefined. You would then need to go to the calibration dropdown and pull whichever calibration you'd specifically like associated with that object, and that would autofill. Similar to the rest, if you just pulled from the calibration dropdown, it auto-populates that information. Some of the settings for calibrations are kind of similar to the output, where you have the option to show start or abort, depending on what you want to restrict the user to, or if you prefer to see one, and then you have custom start and custom abort heading text that you can do. For math constants, it's the K constant. You pull a drop, like everything else, it's going to be an undefined. If you pull from the object, you then would need to go to the math constants drop down, your specific constant, and then drop that on top. And the same thing, if you pull from here, it's going to default to this option. The settings are going to be the same as the rest on the right. The nice feature that I just learned about in support, helping someone else out, was this allow edit. If you have allow edit checked, this is going, and you save that out, and you're in display mode. So if allow edit's checked, you have to be in display mode to be able to use this feature. So if I go back to display mode and my allow edit was checked and I click the math constant, I can actually edit this math constant directly in the dashboard. And if I change that to 10 and I hit save, you're going to get a sending constant message. And at that point, this is going to update the dashboard. It's also going to update and save that constant in Stack Studio, and it's going to update and save the constant in the logger. So if you just change it here, it will update both, and you'll keep getting the sending constant message. And once that goes away, you know that those were updated. The one thing I did see in support, the ticket was for they said they updated all these constants, but the logger was not updating. They saw that their data lab constants, when they opened it up, they were still using their old value. So it turns out, and that's the message you get, a constant sent when it changed and saved. So it turns out that they had 4 or 5 constants. They changed all of them. They clicked, hit sent, and then they moved down to the next constant. It wasn't sending a complete message to the logger. It would update Stack Studio, but it was not updating the logger. It would basically skip the logger step and then go immediately to the next constant. So what I recommended is just update one constant, make sure you get constant sent, and then update the second and third and fourth and so on. So make sure you get a constant sent message before you move on to updating a second one if you're going to do multiple at a time. Go back into edit mode. I believe that's it for the settings there. Controller commands is the last one. You can either pull it up here or down. This is how you can have multiple commands if you want to send to the same data controller or use to designate a data controller any of all the commands. You can do start account, abort account, and you just select it in the drop down and you'd hit send command and it'll do all those commands at once. I've actually never configured this. I just learned about this feature. It can be nice if you have multiple things you need to do. Just with one click, you just hit send. And then the one thing I didn't talk about with the predefined text boxes that I created, if you just pull over the text box icon and drop it, you're going to get just their default option. You can drag and match up however you want with those columns. And then you can edit the text in the field on the right over here, but we'll have text settings of bold, italicized, location of it within the text box, and then you can change the text color and text background. Like I did here, I went with blue and just black, so that there's some nice little features with the text boxes specifically. That kind of rounds out all the objects and what you can do in drag and drop and multi-move. What you would also do is if you want to do the control select multiple objects or you highlight the whole box, if you highlight them all, you can actually resize them all together at the same time rather than doing individual. If you have a bunch of gauges of number of gauges and you want them all to move at the same, you want to create the same size, you can highlight them and then resize them like that. And then when you're all finished, if this was a brand new dashboard, I would click the Save Active Dashboard As, and this is where you're going to be able to edit the name if it's new, and then you can create the private or public. Private is going to be just for anyone that logs in with the username you logged into StackVision with. So I logged in with Plan Admin, so this, if I had it in private save, this would be private dashboard for just the Plan Admin user. So anyone that logs in with Plan Admin would be able to see this dashboard, but if you're not, then obviously you will not see it. Public would be available to anyone with access to dashboards. That's typically what we see. Private would be if you wanted to edit specific colors, input colors, very personalized to you. It's a nice feature to be able to just have that private, and then it won't affect other users. And then you would just save that out. Kind of back to the presentation. Some keyboard and navigation shortcuts we have are similar to just any commands on your PC. You got Control Z is going to undo. So if you accidentally removed or changed a color and you just wanted to go back, just Control Z. Control A is going to select all the controls that you've created on that dashboard. So if you wanted to select everything and change the size, or say you just had gauges and you wanted to change, that's an easy way. It's just Control A, it's going to select them all. Control C and V are going to be copy paste, similar just to PC commands. Nudge is one that I did not know we had. That's where if I go back in and I select that vertical gauge and I just arrow up, you can see that just nudges it just up a little bit, down, right, left. So if you wanted to get close and you're, say the computer's a little laggy and you don't know if you're going to have a gap or not, you want there, you can nudge it up slightly and to the right, and that's pretty nice way to get it all organized and visually pleasing. Zoom in and zoom out. If you hold the control key and then use your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and zoom out. And then you also just have the mouse wheel. If you're zoomed in, you can scroll up and down, or you got these bars on the bottom as well. So those are just some navigational shortcuts that I use and that I've used multiple of these that are easy to use. So now we're going to talk about flags. You might have saw those as a setting on the right. You can prioritize these flags by importance. I'll show you that up and down. We can do multi-selection and apply and share flags to multiple parameters. And then we can also do a reset option, which I will demonstrate now. So if I go, zoom out back to where it was, this flow parameter top left, if you go to the flags here, you'll see you have all the possible flags from the controller and masks as well. So say I wanted to enable, I want to see the OOC, I want to see when we're offline and when we're in cal. Then I can associate a color with these. So I think OOC should be red. I want to be able to see that. Offline, okay, if we're offline, maybe we just go gray. And if we're in cal, let's say we go to like a light blue. So those would be the colors associated there. And if you then click share flags and then save, that would save out those colors. And then the flags are prioritized from top to bottom. So right now, if I deem OOC a T flag from the logger, so this would, for OOC, the logger would have to be pulling in a T flag. If it's just out of control masks, I need to have that T flag for this. That's what the T and the logger message means. But if I deem that to be the most important thing I want to see, I want that at the top of my list. And then if I want offline to be next, and then cal, you just prioritize from top to bottom. It's only going to show one color at a time. So if you're OOC and offline, and OOC is at the top, it's just going to show you as OOC, and it's going to be as red up top here with the colors. The other nice feature here is this alert and warning field down at the bottom. These work similar to just like warning alarms and polling, if you've ever been in Stack Studio, polling alarms. So I can set an alert. So right now that 1 minute data is at 480, so I'm just gonna make sure if it changes, I'll set the alert to 200, and you'll see it highlights it red. That's the default color is red, and it's gonna give you a little alert message. If I also have warning, say I want that when it's below 300, it's going to show the alert because alert is prioritized over warning. If I swap these two, we should see it. My dashboard's been a little funky on my test machine when I was testing this earlier. It would work sometimes and it wouldn't work others. It might need to pull in a new minute, but it will swap to warning message and it would go to yellow. Like I said, it was working on my test machine. It's on and off. I have tested this on a customer machine and it was working. So that's the flag settings here. So now if I multi-select, if I'm in a table, let's say, and I want all these parameters to have the same flag settings, if you control click and you see there's a black highlight, see there goes to warning. So it looks like at the top of the minute it swapped it and adjusted the settings. It pulled it a new minute. So back to the table, if it's highlighted black, those are going to be the flag settings that I've selected to mass edit. So if I went and I wanted all these to have the same flags, I would hit share flags. You'd get this message and say this will apply flag settings only to the selected parameter objects, so the ones that I've selected. But those warning and alert messages I did for the yellow and red, only the colors are going to be shared. The values within those alert and warning limits, those are not shared because they're different parameters. It just doesn't take those. That way you're not getting warning and alerts that you were unaware of, and you just hit share and if I click out and back in, you'll see that those flag settings are associated with each parameter that were selected. So you can, I believe if you can control select, and then the same thing as if you did the highlight, it would select, no, it looks like it just selects the table, and then within the table, you'd have to control click each parameter individually to do that. And then I believe that works if you do these objects. If you selected these in the drag and pull window, then you can edit those, mass edit those flags, and you have to hit share and then save for those to save out. And then say you messed up and you want to just go to default, you didn't like the edits you made. Flag did not pop up. There's a flag. You'll see a reset flags. If I just reset that for that one parameter, if I multi-selected it and I didn't want it to be included, you just hit reset and it will clear everything and go back to a default setting. So that's it for flags. So active alarms was a newer feature, one of the recent releases. I can't remember which one, but if you have no active alarms present, the active alarms button will not flash at you, and then you'll see a no active alarms message displayed. You'll have 3 different alarm types. If I go to display mode, I'll show you what it would look like if you're in the operating room. So this is flashing. I have active alarms. And the alarm types that are in here are same as in StackVision. You've got the 3. You've got data, system, and application alarms. They're going to show 10 alarms per page. You're going to have 10 pages. So it's only going to show the most recent 100 alarms. So if you have anything more than that, you're not going to be able to go back than the previous 100. And then you'll see there's this refresh option down here. You can manually click that if you don't think this page has been updating. If you just press this little blue, the blue arrows at the bottom, that's just going to refresh those active alarms. Oh yes, so within here you're going to have states. This little red bell is an outstanding. That displays when the alarm has not been acknowledged and has not been returned to normal. I'll show you that in the PowerPoint. And then you'll have a yellow triangle and a warning alarm icon is when it's has not been acknowledged, but it has returned to normal on its own. So just letting you know, hey, like you haven't done anything with this alarm. It has returned to normal on its own, but you need to acknowledge it. And then the green check mark is been acknowledged, but has not returned to normal. So someone went in there and acknowledged that the alarm existed, but the data has not returned that to normal on its own. Within the alarm page, so you can actually just quickly look at it if you hover, but if you click, it'll stay up. If you right click that alarm, that's where you have the acknowledge option and return to normal. So a little bit about the building, predictive and target averages. I just wanted to talk a little bit about these. In our older console viewer, I discussed this, and it seemed that they were eating up, depending on how many averages you had, it would eat up some CPU usage and slow down servers. We haven't been seeing that issue with dashboards. We actually have been swapping people from console viewer to dashboards, and it helps with server speed and any issues with CPU usage. We've been seeing that dashboards can handle these averages a lot better. So if you've been using building predictive or target averages on a console and you're looking to go to dashboards, that's one benefit other than the user-friendly ability to create dashboards. But a building average is just one that indicates a compliant average up to the current minute. So if you have a 3-hour rolling, it will take the previous 2 hours and build you a 3-hour average with the previous 2 hours and the current minute data that you're on. A predictive average is going to calculate what the final value would be based on the actual data collected while staying at the most recent valid value. And then the target average helps you calculate a level of emissions that will help you stay at a user-defined target limit. We have some more information on this. These can get kind of into the weeds. These two are a little bit harder to explain. So if you want to learn more about those, you can either reach out to me after the presentation or to the support desk, and we'll gladly give you some more information and help you understand how those are built and used. So some new features that were in StackVision 7.3. I think I touched on some of these already, but the bring and send toolbar menu. So that was the option to, when I'm in edit, have an object. If I wanted to send this behind the trends, you just click it, bring it back in front. That's how that one's used. The trend chart graph auto scaling. I believe I talked about if you have the chart highlighted and then you have the parameter selected at the top, make sure you have that parameter selected to bring up the scaling option. So you have to have, again, at the top highlighted, and you can uncheck auto scaling and then manually edit, but it's always going to default to auto scaling. And then the trend chart y-axis values, the 3 digits, it's going to use engineering notation. It's going to default to that regardless of the size of the trend. That was just for visual ease and consistency that we decided to do that. And then it looks like the active alarms page refresh option that was added in 7.3, the ability to manually click that to refresh. If you want to know what was added in any of the other 7.0, 7.1, 7.2 versions, again, just reach out to me. I can send you the release notes and then discuss each option with you if you'd like to know a little bit more about those. But at this time, that is all I had. If there are any questions at this time, I'd be able to answer those for you.
But if there is no other questions, Quinn, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's about it. For the 7.4 release, what I heard is that it's going to be mainly focused on all those EPA and reporting updates. So I don't think there'll be a ton of dashboard stuff, but we'll be seeing that shortly, and we'll have release notes that you can see if you're interested in going to 7.4. But there might not be a ton of dashboard related to that time. But other than that, that's pretty much all I had.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today and taking the time to watch our webinar. We will see you next time. Thank you.